Welcome to the tutorial for the To-Do app. This video assumes that you have Android Studio installed and you have a working emulator. Our goal for this video is that we'll create a brand new Android Studio project and walk through some of the scaffolding that Android Studio sets up for us. The first thing we'll do is open up Android Studio. Let's create a brand new Android Studio project. Here, select Empty Activity. The various other options here are useful sometimes, but they instruct Android Studio to set up your project with a lot of extra stuff, which might be confusing. So for now, just pick Empty Activity. Here we have the option to name our project, so I'm going to call it SimpleTodo. I'll leave most of these as the default. The package name is a unique identifier for your project. The location can be anywhere you want. The language will use Java, and the minimum API level I'll leave it as API 21. Generally, the older API version that your phone can support, the more devices it will run on. And finally, make sure you check this box for Use Android X artifacts. Android X is a major improvement to something called the support library in Android. Don't worry too much about it, but it'll make your life easier if you check this box. When you tap Finish, Android Studio will actually create the project for you. If you're not familiar with Android Studio, it's worth spending a few minutes to get familiar with the interface. At the top, you have the nav bar over here, which shows you the directory for the active file. In this case, is mainActivity.java. And on the right side, you have the toolbar, which has a bunch of useful options. For example, being able to run the app. The main part of the Android Studio interface consists of two sections. On the left, you have the Project Explorer, and on the right, you have the Editor pane. The Project Explorer gives you a view of what are the different files and resources that make up your project. And you can have a good idea of what Android Studio created for us when we made our project. So the couple different folders that we can look at here are the Java folder, which is where all the Java source files are located. In our example, we only have one, which is mainActivity.java. Then you have res, which stands for resources, and this contains all the resources. And if we open that up, you can see that there are a bunch of different folders. The main one we're interested in is something called activity main. Then you have manifests, and there's one file in there called Android manifest, which dictates application-wide settings. And you'll notice that if I tap on any file in the File Explorer, in the Project Explorer, it'll open up in the Editor pane. So we actually see what are the contents of that file. And then there's another directory for Gradle scripts. And these are build scripts for compilation, dependency management, and code generation. So the way that you can think about the Gradle scripts is they're responsible for taking the actual Java files and the layout files and packaging it up in a way that the Android system can actually understand and run an application from it. And what we'll do later on is we'll actually be modifying the build.gradle file in order to extend functionality of our app. So in this file, which is in the app module, you can add other dependencies into your project to increase the functionality by including some sort of library. So let's go back and revisit the layout file. The main layout file that we have, which defines the user interface for application, is called activity main. And what you'll notice is that instead of showing you the text behind activity main, the default view for Android Studio is that it will show you the actual UI. And the reason is because the XML is actually what is defining the user interface. And so this view is a way for you to drag and drop certain components onto the UI and have that automatically update the underlying XML. But the important thing to keep in mind is that there's a one-to-one correspondence between what you see here and the actual XML file that's being generated. And so there's two tabs at the bottom. One is called design and one is called text. And any changes you make in one will be reflected in the other. So typically when I develop an application, what I like to do is start out in the Design tab and drag over whatever widgets I need, for example, a button or an image view, and to make minor adjustments to it, I go into the Text tab. So you really should be familiar with both. By default, what you will likely see in activity-main.xml is a constraint layout which has a single text view inside of it which just says hello world. One thing that we'll do is actually change the root element. Instead of being a constraint layout, let's update this to be a relative layout. And when you change the initial tag, you'll see that the ending tag should automatically get updated. The reason we're making this switch is because relative layout is a bit simpler compared to constraint layout. And for the purpose of this video, relative layout will suit our purpose just fine. As a final step, it's always good to sanity check that our app is actually building successfully and we can actually run the app. The way we'll do that is we can tap on this green arrow icon to run the app. And the first time that you run it, we'll need to actually start up an AVD, an virtual device, an Android virtual device. I have a few set up already, so I'm just going to say, I'm going to pick one of them. And the first time it'll take a little bit of time to actually compile everything and push it onto this emulator. And here you can see that the app was built successfully and we were able to see hello world, which matches the design that we see here. One thing you can do is play around a bit with the emulator, and you can see this is like a normal phone. If you open up all the apps, you should now see an app called SimpleTodo, and that will open up the app. If we go into Android Studio and you tap on this red square icon, that'll stop the app. So you can see that it actually just killed the app. Now that we verified that our simple app runs fine, we can get to the design and implementation of the To-Do app.